Okay. Welcome everyone. This is my first time of doing live streaming. Sorry, I'm a minute or so late. Today I will be reading from my book, Scent of Water by Simisola Ogoyinka. My name is Simisola Ogoyinka. Let me introduce myself to you. Okay, so I am that writer who came to the United States in 2017, filed for myself and my family based on my skill as a writer. You may have heard about being consistent, being sure, some of the things we are hearing about immigration in my the United States may be like scaring some of us. I want to encourage you, be consistent with what you're doing, be skillful, be trained, and do well with what you're doing. I am that writer. I have a story to tell, and maybe in some other video, I will tell my story fully. Today, we are reading my book, Scent of Water. Thank you for everyone who voted. From time to time, when we pick a book, I will post it out there, allow you to choose which of my books you want me to read. Like I was introducing myself, I've been writing for more than 20 years. I have more than 50 books to my name. I've ghostwritten, I've collaborated, and I mean, just talk writing, and I'm there. And I'm really so excited to be doing this today because uh, I'm right here with all of you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for voting. I knew that some people wanted Rogue, some wanted Scent of Water. Scent of Water got more votes. But subsequently, we'll do this again over and over again. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please go right there and click the subscribe button, subscribe, so that you can know when I'm going live and when these new videos are coming up. So again, back to my introduction. I think I'm going to be going in and out of that for the first few minutes. I've been writing for more than 20 years. I've done the self-publishing, I've done traditional publishing, I've done hybrid, and soon I'm going to be, taking us on courses and training on how to do some of these things. Like I told you, I am that writer who got my green card and eventually my citizenship with the United States. I filed for the special skills, and I got, approved within 1 year. Myself, my husband, and 4 children, we had our green card, and five and a half years down the line, we got our citizenship. So don't be discouraged. And I'm also interested, I'm invested in, teaching people how to write and how to write well and how to leverage on their writing. So that's not what this video and this live streaming is about. It's about this book, Scent of Water, and I'm going to be talking about this book real quick before I start reading. Again, I'm live, so if you want to leave a message, a comment, if you want to leave a question, please go ahead, like the live stream. Love on me, let's love on one another very well, and I'm so happy to be here. Okay, so Scent of Water is a book I wrote back in 2007. Yeah, 2007. I self-published it on Amazon. It did well a little bit, because I was also, selling. I'm also a pastor's wife, so I sold to members of our church, and a lot of people gave a lot of, nice reviews. So when I saw people, nominating Scent of Water, I was like, these are my oldies, people who loved me back then. Scent of Water is a story I really love. It was inspired by a dream. Now, talk about how you get your stories, how you get inspiration for stories. Yes, this book was inspired by a dream. And I'm someone who does not dream like that. I thank God that my dreams don't come true. So sometimes when I have some weird dreams, like I don't even know where this dream is coming from, I just realized and I just assumed that, yeah, maybe this dream is actually maybe it's actually a dream that was supposed to be a book, and I do that. Give me 1 second, let me do something right here. I have to learn how to do a lot of this stuff. Okay. Yeah, God. If I can't fix, okay, yeah, I got it.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Forgive me for that little glitch. I'm right here and I'm back. And I'm going to be reading from this book, Scent of Water. Like I was saying, I got inspired to write this book through a dream. I had a dream, and I saw this. I was living in Calabar at the time, Calabar, Nigeria, and I saw this group of, prisoners, and they were being led by a warden. And I just woke up. I was driving. I had my kids in the car. I was driving, and I saw them going, and I woke up, and I just got inspired to write this book, and I just kept writing it. And beautiful story. I'm excited. So let's dive in. Now, before we dive in, I'm going to read 5 chapters today. I have my kombucha here, and I have my bottle of water here as well. So I'm going to be sipping. My throat gets so dry so fast. So I'm going to be sipping and reading, and waiting for us to get right there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. If you don't like my voice, let me know quickly so that I will go and do voice training for this reading. All right. Okay, so here we go. Scent of Water by Simisola Ogoyinka. It's a novel. The story is purely fictional and represents the craft and imagination of the author. Any coincidence of the fictional names and places with real persons living or dead and real places is unintentional. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without written permission from the author. First published in 2007 by Author House Incorporated, then republished by Amazing Graphics in 2008. And this edition of the hardcover format was published on Amazon by PWG Publishing in 2021. Copyright 2021, Simisola Ogoyinka, all rights reserved. Scent of Water confirms the writer's prowess in suspense and compelling storytelling skills. The storyline is thought-provoking, entertaining, the presentation and diction simple and pastoral, with a sagacious and didactic creative genius neatly woven into a picturesque and breezy prose. No doubt, Pastor Simi is a writer to watch. This was a review by Edwardson Ta Ofre, a pastor and legal practitioner. And dedication in sweet memory of my friend Oyinkansola Onosanya, 1972 to 2000. Acknowledgement. Barrister Ofre, Barrister Sassi, Dr. Joseph Achibong, Dr. Chineze, Dr. Chidi, and Onose, who's at the time in her 5th year in medical school, for their professional advice and constructive critique. Thank you. Emmanuel for his experiential insights. Thank you. Brother Gbola Ifatroti for throwing his financial weight on the project. Thank you. My loving husband, Afolari, for believing in me and encouraging me to keep doing what I love. Thank you. Scent of water. For there is hope for a tree if it is cut down, that it will sprout again and that its tender shoots will not cease. Though its roots may grow old in the earth and its stump may die in the ground, yet at the scent of water it will bud and bring forth branches like a plant. And this is from Job chapter 14, verses 7 to 9 of the New King James Version of the Bible. Chapter 1. The 3 children chattered excitedly at the back of the 2002 Hyundai Excel as their mother, Esam Bassey, maneuvered the sleek engine skillfully to join the traffic heading toward Watts Market. She spotted a group of prisoners chained to themselves in dirty prison rags, marching away from the stadium in the opposite direction. She had just picked her children up from school and should be headed home, but she was surprised to find herself heading towards the largest market in Calabar. The prisoners caught her attention and she slowed down, causing motorists behind her to hoot impatiently. She didn't care. She looked through her rearview mirror at the chained prisoners as they passed, and suddenly noticed 2 on the last row were beating up a 3rd one. She saw the anguished face of the molested one, and pity for him, welled up from within her. She began to hoot desperately for the warden accompanying the prisoners to stop the molesters. She hooted and hooted, refusing to acknowledge the traffic commotion she was beginning to cause. And then one of the wardens turned and saw the beaten man on the ground, bleeding. Esam woke up with a start and looked around her. She had been dreaming. The dream made no sense to her. She checked her bedside clock. It was just 2:30 a.m. She sighed and mumbled, "Peace in Jesus' name," and turned the covers over her head. She was fast asleep within the minute, her funny dream forgotten. Esam Bassey was a resident pediatric surgeon at the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital and a lecturer in the College of Medicine. She was a young widow who, over the years of her widowhood, carved a niche for herself, priding herself in living peacefully against all the odds she had encountered in her short but eventful life. When she woke up the following morning, it wasn't her strange dream that came to her mind. She had a surgery to correct a condition called strabismus, or cross eyes, on a 9-year-old. It was actually the ophthalmologist who was supposed to do the operation, but since the patient was a child, she was scheduled to be in the theater. Afterward, she had lectures that would last about 2 hours and a safety talk for her children's Bible class later in the evening. Wednesday was her busiest day of the week. Her passion had always been for children ever since she was a child, and her mother had told her to have lots of her own when she grew up. But contrary to this, she had lost her husband of 7 years, branded barren by folks and suspicious in-laws. Instead of moping about her ill fate, Esam had thrown herself into her work and into the care of other women's children. As part of her daily routine, Esam enjoyed listening to the late night news. Somehow, it helped her to unwind. Arriving home tired after a hectic day, she cuddled up on a couch with a bowl of strawberry ice cream, her meal for the night, and watched the news. The newscaster, a friend, ran through the news that had been broadcasted all day, but which Esam had missed because of her work. And Esam listened with near boredom. It wasn't until a news item on prisoners in the state came up that Esam jolted up. State of the federal prison on Ormond Street is so deplorable that prisoners are chained together and made to sleep on bare ground outside the cells because of lack of space within the cells. Speaking to us, the controller of the prisons decried the state of the facility and called on the federal government to intervene speedily while imploring philanthropists and charity organizations in the state to come to their aid. Nkoyo Asibon, reporting for CRBC TV. A passing overview showed some of the prisoners in their khaki prison uniforms for less than a second. But the newscaster came before the newscaster came back on with the rest of the news. But Esam was not listening anymore. She was sitting upright, her ice cream melting away in her hand. She had seen the molested prisoner of her dream. In that split second, when the prisoners were shot, she had recognized the face from her dream. Strange. She had not even remembered the dream all day. She drew in her breath and called the dream from her subconscious, pulling the pieces together with great effort. Definitely, it had been the same face. She wasn't a dreamer of any sort and never even had one dream come to reality. Why this one? Who was he? She had never been involved in prisons outreach in her church and had never even had cause to attend to a patient from the prison. Worse still, she didn't even know the way to the prison premises. She sighed and pushed the thought from her. Maybe she was just being paranoid. She took in a deep breath and finished her watery ice cream. A warm bath would help in calming her nerves and loosening her muscles. Maybe she would have a repetition of the dream, and that would confirm whatever was there to confirm. God had never spoken to her in a dream before, though through his word, yes, through visions from other people, but not a dream like this one. If he planned to start with this one, at least he would make it clear, she thought. She had the whole week ahead of her to get the confirmation she needed. When Esam turned off the lights that night, it was the audacious face of the hardened criminal flashed from the dream, being beaten down, that she saw before she yielded herself to sleep. Chapter 2. The week moved faster than some others Esam had witnessed, and when she woke up on Sunday morning, she was strong and refreshed. And she had totally forgotten all about her troubles early in the week. She took time to worship God more than usual, feeling spiritually high and expectant. She always enjoyed Sunday worship in her church because of the liberty she experienced in her spirit, especially when she led the children in the worship. The heavens were always open because the spirit of children always yearned for God. And though she was on call that weekend, she did her best to reserve a few hours to attend the worship service. It was a bright and sunny day. Church was full to the brim as usual. The children's church was bubbling with life. Esam never partook in the adult service except when the children had to minister there. As soon as she parked her Corolla at the best available space, closest to the children's auditorium, she headed straight for her place of primary assignment. She taught the toddlers class. It was a fabulous time in God's presence. A 3-year-old girl took praise worship with backup by 3 others of her age. Esam always derived great pleasure in the little joys the children alone had the capacity to give. She taught them about Jesus and how he bade little children to come to him. The children were taught some rhymes and songs. Toward the end of the service, the chief usher in the adult service called Esam over to collect some snacks for the children. I'm sorry, he apologized as he met Esam at the entrance of the main building. I nearly forgot. He led her to the usher's room within the auditorium. Ma dear brought cake and soft drinks for the children. Said it was her granddaughter's birthday. That should be Arit. She kept telling us her granny brought cake. But she's only two and still can't articulate her words. Esam smiled, wondering why Imadie had not taken the refreshments to the children's church directly. Service was almost over, and the children were restless once their parents started trooping out of the church. As Esam hurriedly left the small package, the pastor's baritone voice caught her unawares. Thank you for honoring God. His word says in the book of Matthew, chapter 25, and verses 34 to 40, that when we minister to the prisoners, we are ministering to Him. Are there more people coming forward? He paused. Esam paused at the entrance, wondering why her legs would not move. The pastor began to speak again. She was carrying the beautiful cake well balanced on a crate of soft drinks. It was heavy and her hands were beginning to hurt her, but her legs refused to move. We need clothes, toiletries, and food items, more volunteers to visit. And if God has laid it on your mind to give other items like mattresses, beddings, oh, praise God. I just got a note now from a family willing to sink borehole at the prisons. Oh, thank. Esam pushed herself toward the children's church. If she could get 5 more minutes, then the children would sing for Arit. As she hurried back, she noticed her heart was beating, pounding. After church, she walked to the pastor's office and fixed an appointment for the following week, with the hope that she would be able to coordinate her righteous feelings by the time she met with him. Pastor Favor, a man in his 40s, was warm and receptive. Even though he had never met Esther, she felt at ease at once and in his presence. The children's ministry was a very large one, and he had had cause to address the more than 20 teachers on a few occasions. But Esam's face did not really register with him since she was just one of the very quiet ones. Miss Bassey, so how's the children's work? He asked cheerfully when she sat mute, gazing at him. Very fine, thank you, sir, she replied, looking nervously at her fingers. How was she going to start this? She thought ruefully. Was there something you needed for your class? Pastor Favor asked gently, noticing her discomfort. The question was only a prompter. He knew that if she needed something for her class, she would meet the pastor in charge of the junior church. He was a very busy man, and for this lady to fix an appointment to see him and not her departmental head, he felt it must be important. Oh no, sir. I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with my class. The class is very fine. Esam stuttered. She had to continue. She had to say something sensible. He was waiting for her to talk. It's about the prisons ministry. She stopped. This was ridiculous. A meaningless dream, a passing picture, a general announcement. And here she was making a big fool of herself and wasting her pastor's time. Pastors were meant to advise and counsel, not to interpret incomprehensible dreams. She really felt funny saying this, but she had not been able to resist thinking about it for the past few days. She kept seeing the brief flash of the prisoner's face, the pain-filled, anguished, nonchalant, and hardened expression tore at her heart. Oh, that. Well, thanks for showing interest. After seeing the news brief on the condition of the prison, I was really moved to make announcement in church for contributions. Work has already started on the borehole, and someone even pledged a generator for the offices, a small generator. You won't believe it. The response is absolutely tremendous, he said gleefully, thinking and wondering why she was so nervous about a contribution. You can see the prison's outreach coordinator to give your donation. Pastor Favor was referring her. He had a lot to do and couldn't afford time for this. He had emphasized in church that the outreach coordinator was fully in charge. He would give her a benefit of doubt about this since she was probably in the children's church and hadn't heard the full details. People listened with their minds, and many people often passed on the wrong information. Probably she had been misinformed. He just couldn't understand why she would fix an appointment just for this. People always wanted a pastor to handle all their problems, magnified and minute. Sir, it's not just that. She really burst into his thoughts. I had a very strange dream about the prisoners, the dawn of the news brief. I saw one prisoner I had never seen before in my life. She looked at her pastor and saw she wasn't making any sense. I shouldn't have come to bother you about this. She stood up. I'm just so confused. And I don't even know why, she said, close to tears. What was wrong with her? Please sit down, Pastor Favor said gently, seeing her confusion. There was more to it after all, and he felt a little guilt for his impatience. Tell me the dream. She reluctantly and slowly narrated the dream as best as she could. What beats me, Pastor, is that I saw him. The same face was on TV the following evening, she said, shaking her head. She couldn't still understand that. She had never had a dream come true in her life. Maybe you should follow the church to the prison and find out yourself, he said. Her head shot up in surprise. She had thought he would dismiss her dream and just pray with her. You think so, sir? She gasped. I think so, he replied seriously. I'll give you a note to Brother Pius. He's the prison's outreach coordinator. He took a piece of paper from his notepad and scribbled on it. He will assist you and answer any questions you have. I don't think a dream like that should be ignored. If anything comes up, don't hesitate to let me know. Pastor, thank you so much for your time and your counsel. I feel a little relief already. I was scared I had started losing it, Esam said. I am privileged. Pastor Favor stood up as she did. Let's take a quick break. I'm not going to stand up from here, but maybe you want to grab a snack, you want to grab a drink, or you want to leave a comment. Let's do that real quick, and I will be going on to chapter 3 in a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Don't go away. Mm. All right, let's come back. Scent of Water is the book we're reading, and I'm going to continue right now. Here is chapter 3. Oman prison was just as scary and repulsive as Esam had imagined it to be for the 2 weeks she had to wait to visit with other members of the prison outreach. Brother Pius had been of tremendous help to her, giving her time to answer her questions about the operations of the prison and preparing her psychologically for what to expect. After sharing her dream with him, he had encouraged her to look out for the man in her dream and, if possible, have a conversation with him. The weather had been cold and wet all week, depicting her anxiety. But that Saturday morning, the sun was up, bright and hopeful. Esam wore long sleeve baby pink checkered shirts that blended beautifully with her milk chocolate complexion and natural pink lips over a faded denim skirt, brown belt, and brown leather slippers. She brushed her hair, she brushed back her spotting waves hairstyle into soft, rippling waves. Her fingers shook as she applied a thin layer of blue eyeliner on her eyes and light lip gloss, the only makeup she felt safe wearing. The eyeliner blended beautifully with her denims. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she met with approval. She looked modest enough and nervous enough. She packed her contribution meal of jollof rice and fried chicken in her car and busied herself as she drove to the prison with thoughts of calling the whole thing off. She wasn't cut out for this. She wasn't a prison evangelist. She pushed on though. She didn't plan to speak with the prisoner. She would just confirm if he was truly the man in her dream. Curiosity was what prompted her on and on. She struggled in her mind. As the prison officials checked them in, Esam wished once more that she wasn't here. I'm not cut out for this kind of thing. I'm a children's teacher, she breathed. Ma'am, a prison official looked at her. Nothing. She smiled nervously. The canopies and chairs earlier organized by the church for the program had been set up, and the group of 8 brothers and 4 sisters moved to make the final arrangements. The space given them was more like a football field within the premises, with the cells some distance away. They had 3 canopies arranged in a semicircle. The male inmates were seated to the right, the females to the left, with the church group in the middle. The males had filed out first, all of them clad in old and worn short-sleeved, supposedly white khaki shirts and shorts. Prison numbers were sewn with red thread on the left breast of the shirt, bold enough for someone standing at least 2 meters away to read. They all looked sick and dirty, some old, others remarkably young. One particularly young looking one was in leg chains. Seeing them sent shudders through Esam's body, and she found her palms were sweating. She looked at the faces as carefully as she could. She didn't see any face she recognized. There were up to 30 of them. Esam knew the prisoners' recreation time was being used for the crusade, and they had the option of attending. She'd been told many of them just come out for the sole reason of talking with people on the outside. The prisoners took their seats, most looking bored and compulsive. 3 wardens stood around listlessly. The female inmates were then brought out and were led to their seats. There were only 6 of them. One was heavily pregnant. To Esam's surprise, the women were in mufti. As she stood nervously, Brother Pius walked up to her and smiled. He was an elderly man in his 50s, and during the short period of their acquaintance, Esam had learned he had been in jail before. Do you recognize any? He asked simply as the brother stood in the center and started to lead the opening prayer for the group. No, she shook her head dejectedly. It's all right, he patted her hand. The dream may just mean nothing after all. Enjoy the program, he added softly and moved away to take his seat with the other brethren. More members of the church joined them, and by the time the program had reached an end, they were almost 20 from the church. The sisters in the group proceeded to serve the food as soon as the service was over. The wardens allowed them to mix with the prisoners, and as the food was served, brothers moved to sit, eat, and chat with the male inmates, while sisters moved with the females. Esam, unable to associate with the prisoners, busied herself packing the remaining food together. They decided to leave the remainder with the prison officials for the prisoners. After doing all she could to stay busy, and realizing it would be awkward to remain idle at the serving table, she took her food, a very small portion of which she'd served herself, and as at an extreme corner with the other females. Since there were so few, the sisters had taken the prisoners one on one. Esam tried to listen in on a conversation going on between two sisters and the pregnant inmate while she chewed on her rice. I don't dey here now, e reach almost 3 months. They no gree call my case for court. What about your husband? I no get husband. Na just the man wey dey follow sell the cocoa, na him dey get dis my pikin. I no get husband. Do you have a lawyer? Na the man wey get dis my pikin, na him just dey talk to him friend wey go arrange lawyer for the two both of us. His hair also. Na him sit down for that other side there. She pointed at a group of 3 male prisoners, all gaunt looking, talking with a brother from the church. Do you believe God can deliver you from this prison? Wetin God no fit do? Na him bring me come here. Na him go comot me when time reach. God can do more than that. He can give you a new life, a new identity, if you just surrender your life to him. He is able to do much more than you can ever imagine. He's the one that breaks down prison walls. He said in his word that even the lawful captives shall be delivered. The guilty criminals shall even be freed. The prisoner nodded with calculated interest. Esam could not be sure she quite understood the lot of what she was being told, but it seemed she was getting the message. Just then, as though by remote control, her head shot up in the direction of the cells, and she saw a male inmate leaning against the wall, uninterestedly glaring at the company. He was Esam's man. His prison outfit was torn at the sides and it hung loosely on his lean frame. It seemed as though he was staring directly at her. Esam began to tremble. Who was this? From a distance, she heard Brother Pius call on the groups to round up their interactive session. Esam, her foot hardly touched, walked on wobbly legs to Brother Pius and whispered, Look at him over there, staring at us from the cell block. To the right. Brother Pius turned and met the cold glare of the prisoner. At least you can have your peace now. He really is here, and the prison evangelism group will follow them all up. You have fulfilled the purpose God has, Brother Pius said. Esam took one last look at the man before they left. He remained at the entrance of the cell. One of the other prisoners came out of the cell and tried to convince him to join the outreach, but he refused with just a stiff shake of his head. The other one rushed to the field and managed to get a plate of food before the rest was carried away by the wardens. This was a hardened criminal, and Esam was very sure she had never seen him before. Why did she see him in a dream? Her phone rang as she made to enter her cute Toyota Corolla, and she picked it quickly. It was from the emergency room. of the teaching hospital. She excused herself from the group and drove off, her mind already fixed on her job. Though the hospital was a more familiar and welcoming environment, one thing remained on her mind. She needed to come back and see that hardened criminal. Chapter 4. Mike Dabi sat on his worn mattress and gnawed on the chewing stick absent-mindedly. A quarrel was beginning to start at the other end of the cell, something to do with cigarettes, but he wasn't bothered. Cigarettes were not allowed in the cells, but every warden had a price. For the right price, one could get whatever he wanted right inside. Angry voices grew louder beside him, but they sounded miles away. For him, it was just another day. Time passed. Whether it was spent on chewing sticks, smoking, or watching frustrated fellow inmates brawl, it made little difference to him. He never got into a fight and never tried to stop one either. In a cell designed originally for 2 inmates, which now accommodated almost 20 of them, Mike made note of the few opportunities he had at peace. This was one of such when inmates quarreled, slept, or went outside for recreation. Ever since his home address changed to Oman Prison, Calabar, many other things had changed in him also. One of them was keeping to his business. 2 wardens opened the cell door and broke up the fight, seizing the cigarettes that had caused the trouble. On their way out, one turned and looked pointedly at Mike. CM1106, you get visitor, he said. Mike glared at him. Mistaken identity, he blurted out. Follow me, the warden backed and moved on. Mike stood up slowly and followed the warden. A visitor. Incredible. Esam's hands shook as she brought a roll of Mentos out from her bag. Everywhere stank along the short passage they took to the visiting hall. She popped 2 mint tablets into her mouth to push down the nausea. The building was badly dilapidated, and fear gripped her for the umpteenth time. But she had resolved to follow the puzzle to the end. She could imagine what the worst would be. The visiting room was a medium size with one long table and long benches on either side. There was no room for privacy here. The table was long, dwarf-hewn, and looked like the job of an unskilled workman. The benches looked sturdy, but touching one, it wobbled dramatically. Esam discovered it was not balancing well on the ground, and it really wasn't a surprise. The floor, though having had a screed level it, was full of deep potholes and cracks. Most of the ceiling boards were gone, and the remaining few looked drenched with rain that had recently fallen through a leaking roof. Not that the few hanging ceiling boards were of use than to just soak a small part of the drops. Most of them were weak and looked about to drop off. Sit here and wait for him. The warden's voice came from far away, and Esam nodded involuntarily. Her stomach twisted as the warden turned and left her. She took in a deep breath of the stench, regretting it immediately, and exhaled. An old couple sat at the far end of the hall, speaking to a young prisoner, probably their son. Looking around nervously, Esam tested and cleaned a portion of the bench closest to the door and sat down gingerly. She was grateful for the invitation to wear what she wore, a baggy deep purple and grey tie and dye jumper with her brown leather sandals. She felt very comfortable in herself. Her hair was due for retouching, but she had neatly brushed the thick, soft waves backward. She had been contemplating growing back her hair and procrastinating on it for long. Her face, decked carefully with light brown powder, projected her smooth, creamy complexion, and her eyelids, lined with a purple pencil, blended with her dress. The door opened once again, and a warden walked in with prisoner CM 1106. Esam fumbled to her feet, holding her breath to control her fear. You have 30 minutes, the warden said, and walked to an elevated part of the room, not far from them, where he joined another warden to chat. Esam's eyes followed him till he was talking to the other man. To her surprise, she had not even noticed either the elevated spot with two plastic chairs or the warden who had probably been there all along. When she turned to her company, she met soulless dark eyes. She shuddered. My name is Esam Bassey. Esam fidgeted once more and took her seat opposite him. He remained standing, glaring at her. She felt self conscious and sighed. Please sit down, she said, looking at him once more. He was eternally thin and taut, with sunken eyes, cracking lips, lots of rashes, and dried sores on his face. To say the least, he looked sick and hungry, and he was chewing on a small piece of stick as though to convince himself he needed to chew it. Otherwise, maybe he could have been handsome. His voice was deep and rich, strong and healthy when he spoke. What do you want? Where are you from? I don't know you, he bombarded. If you sit down, I will explain myself, Esam said with a calm she did not feel. He took a seat opposite her tentatively, looking as though he would bolt away any minute. Frightened was not the word, more like upset, better described his disposition. I'm a medical doctor at the UCTH. I don't need a doctor anymore, he barked, his eyes intent on her. Well, I'm not here in that capacity, she smiled. Would he let her talk? She had rehearsed what she would say over and over again, but facing him now, she felt intimidated. His plan, no doubt. I saw you on TV, she started nervously and quickly continued, picking her words carefully. It just occurred to me that you might need someone in here and all. It sounded so odd and crazy, even to her. He could have 1,000,001 people visiting him already. She didn't even know his name. She had been able to locate him through Brother Pius's help of describing him to the inmate's pastor and also an inmate himself. His expression changed to one of disgust, confirming her fears. I don't think I have time for this. He started to stand up. On the contrary, I think the only thing you have here is time, she said. The words came out with a tinge of their own irritation. It succeeded in halting his progress. Even if I do have time, you will not dictate to me how to spend it, Dr. Esam Bassey. He replied with a soft voice edged with steel. Hearing her name on his lips sent a strange delight through her. It sounded foreign the way he spoke it, and beautiful somehow. His voice was deep and rich. You take dictations every day from the prison officials. Why not from someone who can truly be your friend? She asked, laughter in her voice. She had not meant to reveal so much so boldly, but she needed to make him relax. It helped to relax her also. His expression changed again, and he almost smiled. I don't want a friend. There is nothing like true friendship, he beat out. Every man needs a friend, she reprimanded gently. That's why I have come to introduce one to you, she added, looking at him. He did not reply but stared back defiantly. What's your name? She asked. I don't need a friend, he stood up abruptly. Warden, he shouted across the room. Wait, please. She stood up, startled. I'm not finished yet. I'd like to. Warden, can we get out of here? He growled, heading for the door. Are you some missionary or what? Then use the F word. What had she done to aggravate him so? She watched the warden walking away, her mouth drooping. It wasn't until they both disappeared out of the room that she came to perceive the stench of the hall again. It hit her like a wave. She walked to the door upset, picking her way. She went back to the gate office where she retrieved her personal articles, her bag and cell phone, which had been withheld on entrance. She was on call today, but she didn't quite feel like it. She just wanted to go home and have a good cry. She succeeded in making a big fool of herself. I'm gonna take another pause for like 2 minutes if we want to, like grab a drink, you want to use the bathroom, and then we can be back and I'll read one more chapter and then we can call it a day. And I'll see you tomorrow next time and we can continue reading the book Scent of Water. Also, this is a good time to let me know what you think. Um, you can just like this video, and you can also subscribe to my channel and tell me what you think about the story so far. Ask a question, leave a comment, answer my question, and let me see, one more minute, and then we can get back to reading another chapter of Scent of Water. Chapter 5. In the 3 years of his incarceration at the federal prison Calabar, Mike had received only one visitor, Dr. Esam Bassey, a complete stranger. He didn't know where she was coming from or what plans she hoped to achieve. One thing he knew, though, was that he shouldn't have walked out on her the way he did. For the umpteenth time, he wished he had been more patient, less surprised. She was a beautiful woman, and that had made him defensive, overtly. He hadn't even comprehended why she came. From the way he left, he was sure she would not come back. If she was from a church, they would probably send someone else next time. She would refuse to come back. He knew some churches were very active in prison ministry, bringing food and drugs and having private visits with prison converts. He didn't want to be anybody's convert. He didn't want anyone's so coveted private visits. He knew many of the prisoners who deceived the church people they were born again just to get private visits. One thing he was sure of was that these private visits made the prisoner feel they belonged to someone, especially those that had been long forgotten by the outside world. Prisoners would often come back with gist of brother this or sister that, living normally and who had adopted the prisoner. He wondered if the relationship was just for the inside or it extended to when the prisoners were finally free. He doubted that. It was a month now, and every day of the month he'd spared a thought for his august visitor. He had replayed every word spoken and comforted himself with her beauty. Once upon a time, he would have fallen in love with her at first sight. He had always had a weakness for beautiful women, But that seemed like ages ago. He was no longer attractive to any female, physically and otherwise, and he couldn't appeal to his sense of judgment in that regard anymore, or else he would risk emotional torture. 3 years, and the most beautiful women he had seen all that time were starch uniformed, rigid, middle aged, overweight prison officials whom they nicknamed Ambassador. Esam Bassey was truly a breath of fresh air, if nothing else. Maybe an angel sent from heaven or a stray ghost. Visitor for CM 1106, a warden bellowed from the entrance of the cell. Mike jumped up. It had to be her. Maybe she had come back after all. Who else could it be? No one remembered him. When he entered the visiting hall, he noticed she was the only one there, and she stood back in the entrance. He used the opportunity to drink in her shapely, hippie figure. Clad in black jeans and a black and white striped ladies' shirt, he wondered what she would think of him. He felt a strong attraction to her. She turned almost as coincidentally as he moved in and smiled easily. He took note of everything about her, from her oval shaped eyes, her small nose and mouth, shapely eyebrows, thick wavy hair that was just a little longer than the last time he saw her, to the tiny earrings she wore with chain and matching pendant resting between her cleavage. Esam followed his eyes to the cleft between her breasts, and the heat poured into her face. She knew her dressing seemed suggestive, but she had not done her laundry in weeks. This was the only thing available. She was paying for her insensitivity. When she looked up at his face, she met with two deep pools of black emotion. She knew she had ruined the purpose of the visit. She never meant to seduce him, but she could feel that pulse. This man, despite his status, for whatever reason he pleased, was going to use her femininity to destroy her. She'd better be prepared. Hi, she croaked after a brief moment of completely losing her voice. Hi, he whispered in response, taking a seat opposite her, obviously struggling to control waging emotions. The warden had already gone to stay at the elevated spot to watch them, probably unaware of anything between them. Esam breathed in deeply to calm herself and sat down. She was here for business, and though she had least expected what just transpired, she decided not to allow the thudding in her chest to deter her. It was a lesson for next time. I'm sorry for upsetting you last time, she stared at him, and he arched his eyebrow in surprise, but didn't say a word. Though you seemed in a foul mood too, she added lightly. Prison is a foul place. The environment dictates the mood most days. You seem better today. That's good. I'm glad I came. Does your husband not care about you, your being here, especially dressed like this? He growled, startling Esam. Oh no, she thought. My husband died 5 years ago, she whispered. I thought you couldn't be married, he said, as though it was a curse on her. I could have been married, she said defensively, wondering why he took such a delight in putting her down. But you craved your freedom too much, he accused her. Tell me about your late husband, widow woman. He beat out mercilessly, his eyes glaring into her face. I would rather we talk about you, she returned his stare with a sardonic smile. She had to control the anger rising within her. After all, she was the one who sought him out in his appetite. Let a sleeping dog lie, they say. She had prodded this one and discovered a wolf. Then I'd rather go back to rot in my cell. He closed his eyes for a second. I don't know the hell who you are, and I intend to find out right now. or the next time you come here, I won't attend to you. He flipped his eyes open. What it had cost him to say those words. But if she succumbed to his threat and told him about herself, then what? He would have to tell her about himself too, and that he didn't want to do. Better they ended this charade today before it got out of hand. It was bad enough that he had suggested she was a loose woman. He remembered she had worn what looked more like a bean sack the last time, and he hadn't seen a single curve. But today was different. She glowed with every curve, every turn, every inch. Her beauty attracted and tortured him. Very well, I'll tell you about my husband, she sighed and looked at him defeated. His stomach sank and he braced himself for her intrusion. He resolved not to break under persistence if it came to that. I married him when I was just 21. We were married for 7 years. No children came from the union because of some medical technicalities between us. What sort of medical technicalities he grounded out, hoping to upset her. He had very low sperm count. Eventually, he became secondarily impotent. The last few years, the marriage was very strenuous. She added quickly, feeling very uncomfortable telling him all this. She hadn't bargained for this. Obviously, he gave a short, spiteful laugh. You should come around sometime. I'll give you a baby. He snickered. Wonder if we'll make the baby under the glare of the wedding. Ha! She grew defensive. He was a good man, and he took care of me. He left a house for me after he died. He didn't have to do it. 7 years of your youth gone, laboring under him. You deserve more than a house, he replied tartly. He was a good man. She felt like crying. Of course he was. At least he died soon enough to afford you another chance at marriage, he said dryly. He was not enjoying this, but he needed to discourage her from coming back. She was killing him. Well, his death did little for my marital status, she laughed bitterly. He's been gone for 5 years now, and I'm still single. Not for want of opportunity, she added. She had never discussed this with anyone before. Why him? You must have loved him very much, he said softly, trying to control a feeling of tenderness that was creeping into him. It was an arranged marriage, she blurted out. He was much older than me. Love was not a factor that reigned in the union at all, she said, as though to lash at him. 21. You were a student? He persisted. She wished he would stop asking so many questions about her past. Yes, she whispered, hoping he would realize what he was doing to her and stop. Why have you refused to remarry? He grated. I believe I lost out in the first marriage. I don't want to make any mistake the second time around, she said conclusively. How old was your husband when he died? 74. He whistled. Some old man you got straddled with at such a young age. Let me see. He looked up and his lips moved for a split second. Esam noticed the strong Adam's apple. He swallowed and she saw horrible shaving sores on his throat. He was 67 when he married you. Some good 46 years older than you. Could have been your grandfather. He sneered, feeling an anger he couldn't justify. He was my grandfather's friend. He was rich, famous, and kind. My father was sure he would provide stability for me, and the marriage did. She defended angrily. Why would he not leave her be? She wanted to stand up and walk away forever, but that would defeat the purpose of reaching out to him for God. Your father, he must, he must be a mean old bastard to subject you to this sort of marriage. Bet he died the minute after he'd done it, spat. He's still alive and well, too. I forgave him years ago. That's what is expected of us as children of God, she said quietly. Her admission stunned him for a second. He had thought his nasty statement would finally burst her anger, break her resolve, and send her on her way. I forgive nothing, he said angrily. CM 1106, time up, the warden backed, moving toward them. I don't expect to see you here again. He looked at Esam and stood up. Tears pooled in Esam's eyes, and she couldn't hide it in her voice. May you find God and forgiveness, she whispered beyond the lump in her throat. May your prayer never be answered, he replied arrogantly and walked away. Esam stood up on shaky legs and wiped the tears that had spilled. I brought some fruits and drugs for you, she called after him awkwardly. She had almost forgotten about them. Leave it at the gate, he called back without pausing in his tracks. Scent of water. That's the end of chapter 5. And I'm going to end the live streaming right about now. Remember to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't yet done that, also like this video and please leave a comment. Did you enjoy the reading? And would you join me tomorrow for us to continue reading? That would be awesome. I had a great time with us today. Thank you for joining the live stream. And also, let me reiterate this. I am a writer. I'm also a game mistress. I'm a producer and I'm an entrepreneur. I am that writer who, by the grace of God, I give all the glory to God. But I am that writer who also came to the United States and filed for my green card based on my special skill as a writer. And going forward, I'm going to be putting together some courses for us to help us to write better. If you are doing something, writing, singing, drawing, you're an artist, you're a musician, you're an actor, actress, whatever you're doing, keep at it. Be consistent, be skilled. Like a lot of people, could have this opportunity as well where you can just, file for yourself and your family within a year of filing for our green card. We all 6 of us got the green card and subsequently we got our citizenship. So till tomorrow when I'll be continue with this book, I'll continue reading Scent of Water. Join me again tomorrow. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.